the Irish. Religion wasn't, their laws, the Brehon was incredibly important to them, and their language and their individual consciousness of their lineage going all. They're very, very proud about their family. Stephen, or Kevin.
More or less, how many generations were they in Northern Ireland? The people that you're referring to. I heard mixed things. A couple of generations or 500 years.
Oh no! What you mean?
Just traveling back and forth from Scotland to Northern Ireland.
Well, the flow was the other way. The flow was from Ireland to Scotland. They colonised Scotland.
So it was after the flight of the Earls. There was a big
No,
move.
well, the flight of the Earls.
Were they just planters? Were they just the planters? Lowland Scots?
Well, they only started to come in after Elizabeth in James' time. They only started to come in, and even then, relatively small trickle of them in the first half of the 1600s, and then there was a big blow up in 1641, and there was a rebellion, and there was it was like the Indians off the reservation, if you like, the native Irish who had not been wiped out, went back and went in and overran the settlers, and they went back to Scotland and England. There was more from England than from Scotland, actually. There was quite a few from Scotland, but they came in almost one particular glump, and it was right after James I became King of England, and he had been King of Scotland for 20 odd years, and it was unthinkable that he would go down and sit even though he was son of Mary Queen of Scots, go down and sit on the English throne. So therefore he had to placate the people that was most likely to be upset, which was the Presbyterians, because they were extremely nationalistic. So he, bought them off, mollified by giving them free land in Northern Ireland. So he imported that strain of landless, fanatically reformed Protestant folks, which gave the Northern Ireland Protestant its distinctive sort of flavour or theme. But it was not, and certainly they didn't move on to Ireland as a lot of people suggest, or to America as a lot of people suggested. And even if they did, the last thing they did was made or drank whiskey or played violins and danced and stuff. So it turns everything on its head, because the character of the people that as Scots-Irish here, which was hard drinking, hard fighting, rough and tumble mountain kind of people, who they certainly weren't puritanical, absolutely not at all. The Scots Presbyterians. Anyway, to get back to the Spanish connection, because there's a lot of aspects to it that I want to get to, including trade. Trade was a very important part of it, and military. Just as the Irish played a very important part in various wars, certainly the War of Independence in America, there's no question in the world Washington would never have succeeded if it hadn't been for the Irish. It was they who stayed with them at Valley Forge. It was they who had no shoes. It was they, for many reasons. They were like that, and they had nowhere else to go anyway. So, and he acknowledged that over and over and over again. But I'd like to talk a little bit about how the Irish latched onto or became very much associated with the actual growth of Spain. They built certainly two empires. You could almost say two or three empires. Even the English acknowledged that they could never have done hardly any of the things they did on the world stage without Irish soldiers. They were the fighters, which is extraordinary because of the.
Well, everybody knows that wherever there's a trouble spot, there's usually a heritage of Irish there.
Well, thank you for that. So we're troublemakers. No, we're not. We're not troublemakers. We have an innate it's the Celtic thing. You know, there's a warrior thing there. It's not that we like trouble. It's not that we like to kill people. It's not. You know, it's just that there is something. It's part.
Ireland was not industrialised, so they had very little choices.
Pardon?
Ireland was not industrialised, so
You can
they
find.
had very few choices.
Right, but they're all incidental to the main fact, and that is that it's part of their nature, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, or just Josh.
I know you are, and it just is part of their nature. It's just part of the basic makeup of them, and it just is. And they were also very outgoing and very involved in trade, so that all of what happened to them is totally contrary to their nature. You know, just as the Jews, not so much Jews, but the Semitics, the people from the Palestinians and the Jews are basically the same people. The people from there are incredible traders, because they were on the trade route for millennia. So it's just built into them. You know, it's just part of the thing. And the Irish being out there in a way in a colonized island almost certainly would attract only the most brave and the ones that would fight. Just the same as out west here, the early settlers were tough. They had to be, you know. So it was for whatever reason so I suppose yes, what you're saying it is. I mean, it is circumstance that originally creates the character, but then it becomes bred into the breed.
Talking, of course, about the 17th century. It was very, very recent times. And did England intentionally not industrialise Ireland for the purpose of having a supply of young men? Like, would have to come down to make money?
Well, its relationship with England is very complicated, so I'm going to kind of, you know, kind of leave that, try and concentrate on the relationship with Spain tonight. But obviously, the uses that England wanted to put its little colony to were for its own purposes, and it certainly used it for the resources that it had. Fighting men was one, and a lot of things that it traditionally traded in, like wool and so on. But then as it developed its own wool industry, it then discriminated. It always passed repressive laws against Irish trade. But one of the ways we know that the trading links with Europe, particularly Spain, were so strong, was by reflection, if you like, the amount of time and effort that it took the English to extinguish it. It took them literally several centuries, and it's interesting that it survived longest and later on the west coast, and particularly Galway. They tried everything they could to patrol and to prevent the Irish trading with Spain, and as I say, the resilience of that trade gives us some idea of how deep it was and how much it was part of the tradition, the Irish tradition. So we can only guess at how established it was, and right down to my own time, literally into my own time, I can remember when it was traditional to accept Spanish currency in shops in Galway. I mean, that was a fact. They would take a Spanish coin or a Spanish currency far quicker than they'd ever take an English pound. So, and it was just one of the things that they just sort of acknowledged. And now, you know, you could pursue that back a few centuries, and of course one of the obvious causes of that was the vast number of west of Ireland, particularly, men who were serving in the Spanish forces and sending money home. So it probably was the only currency that was actually available in Galway. So therefore it was perfectly acceptable as a legal tender, as a medium of exchange. And again, we see a lot of these things by reflection rather than by actual accounts straight out. And all of traders from the West Coast were all considered pirates and smugglers because it was illegal to trade with Spain. So therefore, if you had a ship and you were able to go offshore at all, you were a pirate and you were a smuggler because you were dealing in illegal goods. And right down to even modern times, Daniel O'Connell's family were a very wealthy family because they were smugglers. So therefore, of course, we know they weren't smugglers. They were only smugglers in an English legal sense. They were in fact traders with Spain, and they were one of the last few people to be able to carry it on.